Hi, this is Jenny Baldwin, and I am the Elementary Math Instructional Coach. And today I am going to go over Unit 2 in Math Plus Purple. And this unit is on whole number addition and subtraction. And I want to give you, as a learning coach, some helpful tips and some additional tools so that your child will be successful with this unit. The first thing we're going to do is talk about odd and even numbers. Then we're going to go into some addition and subtraction scenarios, as well as some problems where you really have to use some problem solving to figure out the answer. So to get started, let's go straight to the Math Purple activity book. And this link is something that you should have bookmarked on your computer so that you can save it and open it right away. Now, if you have not used the side toolbar and you're ready for this unit, all you have to do is open it up and go right here to the second unit, whole number addition, and it is going to go right to the odd and even numbers lesson that's first in this series. Now, one thing I want to point out with odd and even numbers is that a lot of us, we know the rule of what makes an odd and what makes an even number, and we only look at the last digit. But we want to make sure that our children don't just follow a rule, like let's look at the last digit, and if it's even, or if it's a 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, then the whole number's even. We really want kids to understand that there's a meaning behind odd and even, and really what odd and even truly is. And so even though some of these numbers are rather large, second grade did focus on smaller numbers up to 20 in odd and even. And they didn't focus on a rule necessarily. It was more to focus on, can this number be divided equally? And the reason this is an important concept to teach is because odd and even lays the foundation for multiplication and building arrays and knowing the divisibility rules and what can be divided equally and what can be divided in other ways, maybe not by twos, but by other things. So it lays the foundation of prime and composite, building arrays, learning multiplication facts. So this is a really important concept. So we don't want to just teach a trick of looking at the last number without the students understand, or the last digit in the number, without students really understanding a little bit more. Now, while I'm on odd and even, I do want to go to this Learnzillion page because, and this link is also in the newsletter, Learnzillion has come out with some new lesson plans. And these lesson plans happen to go with second grade. So if you scroll down, and if you go to right here, it says work with equal groups of objects to gain foundations for multiplication. Now these are all second grade videos and lesson plans, but I will show you, like if we click right here on identify a number of objects as odd or even by pairing the objects or dividing the objects into two equal groups, you'll see how this lays the foundation for understanding the definition of odd and even. So as you go through this lesson, you can watch a video right here from Learnzillion that talks about the equal groups and pairs. And then you can go right here and have a lunch and ask your students, like, well, let's dump a thing of crayons on the floor, grab some. Do you think you have an even or an odd number? And so they could, grab a whole handful and just by, guessing, and then actually have the students, your student, partner them up and try it again. And so to see if they begin to recognize a pattern of what odd and even really means. So again, you don't have to have a workbook all the time to teach something that's really important. Sometimes you need those hands-on interactive things. And then once they begin to see the pattern, oh, the last digit in the number is always divisible by 2. And it's easy to look at the numbers less than 10, 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. And then as you begin to do bigger numbers, they see that that pattern continues to be the same no matter how big the number gets. And then here is an actual task. So you can present this little question to your students and have them say, can 19 be arranged in even rows? And then as you scroll down, there is a debrief, so you can kind of go over the answer and you can click through the different slides and talk about what really happened. And you can also go over common misunderstandings that students often have with odd and even. And then there's more. There's a big idea that talks about What odd and even really means, it means that you can make pairs of two equal groups. It says, however, not all numbers can be arranged evenly. Sometimes there's something left out, and that makes it odd. There's also, it says that sometimes, like even an odd number though, like here's 9, that's an odd number. Sometimes they can be arranged in equal groups. But again, this is a great conversation of building arrays and multiplication that's coming in the next unit. And then there is a closing just to kind of close up the thoughts and summarize the lesson. And then there are practice activities. Practice set A is a little easier, and then practice set B gets a little harder, and then practice set C is even more enriching. And then there is a formative assessment, and I think this is great because it's a kind of way, it's a check for understanding for you. This one, for example, says, Michael thinks that both sets show an even number. Do you agree with Michael? And so some students may just think, oh yes, they're in equal rows, there's 4 in each row, or this one has 5 in each row, they must both be even. But when they actually start pairing them up, they'll realize, well, here's 5, 10, 15. 15's not even because there's not partners, there's no pairs. Here we have 3, 6, 9, 12. 12 is even because we could circle 2 crayons at a time and make equal partners. So this number is divisible by 2, but 15 is not. So it again, taking the concept of odd and even, but presenting it in a way that truly shows it in a conceptual manner is better than just going back and saying, okay, look at this one. Is it odd and even or even? But again, once they learn the conceptual, they'll be able to transfer that to this because they'll know the meaning of odd and even, not just a trick to get an answer. Okay, so next, after you do odd and even, you're going to get into addition and subtraction. Now, third graders do not need to be able to add and subtract with the standard algorithm. The standard algorithm is what you see here. Maybe it's presented in this way, but that doesn't mean that's how they have to solve the problem. What we want third graders to do is use place value understanding to solve problems. When they get into fourth grade, they're going to follow that traditional rules. Well, let's add up the ones, then carry and borrow and do all those things. But what we find is that students follow those rules and they may say, okay, 7 plus 3 is 10 plus 2 more is 12. So I'll put my 2 here and carry my 1. But they don't know what that 1 represents. They don't really understand that that's a 10. We want kids to think about hundreds, tens, and ones. So as you go through this unit, even if the problems are arranged in this manner, we want to encourage students to work them out by using true number sense. And I'm going to scroll through a few examples just to show you. Here's subtraction the same way. Again, they do not have to know how to follow the traditional algorithm until they get to fourth grade. So I am going to go to the manipulative site and I am going to actually draw a number line because I want to show you a strategy that would be really beneficial for kids. This is called an open number line. And let's say that we're going to start with a number like 259. So I'll say let's add 259 plus 112. And you can see that this would require some regrouping and things like that. But again, going straight to a procedure before kids have conceptual understanding is going to cause misconceptions later on. And they, like I said, they don't always understand what that carrying and borrowing and all that means. So what we want to do is let's start with this 259 and let's add 112 to it. And the first thing we can do is start with our hundreds. And I am going to add 100 more. So I'm going to do a hop. And I know that when I add 100 more, I'm going to have 359. So I've added my hundreds. Now I want to add 10 more. If I add 10 more, my 5 is going to change and I'm going to get one more group of 10 because it's in the tens. So here's 10 more. So I end up at 369. And then I need to add 2 ones. And if I have 2 ones, I'm going to change this 9. So I'm going to count up 369, 370, 371, 371. So my answer, or my sum is going to be 371. And I did this without, regrouping or carrying over. I did this by really thinking about tens and ones. Now I am going to erase this board if I can. Let's clear off these objects if it will allow me. Sorry. And then it doesn't necessarily want to click on it, but what we're going to do is talk about how to do the same thing with subtraction. And basically, if you had, let me see if I can erase it since it doesn't want to click on recycle. Okay, I was able to refresh the page, and let's try subtraction this time with the open number line. So if I say we have 282 and I want to subtract 155. Well, students automatically get confused, and I've had a lot of even students in 5th grade who want to follow that standard algorithm, but they really don't understand the place value, like I said. So as you can see, we can't necessarily take 5 ones from 5 or 2 ones. So if we, again, start with our open number line, and kids can write, okay, we have 282, and I know that I need to get to 155. So what's the difference? We want to know the difference. That's what subtraction is, finding out what's in between, how much is in between. So again, if I took away 100, I would end up at 182. And that seems fine because it's still bigger than this number. I haven't gone too far. We ended up with 182. So now let's look at these digits, like how much further could I go? Could I go an entire 30? If I went a whole 30 and took away 3 groups of 10, I would end up at 152. So that's too much. So let's take away, so here we took away 100. Let's take away 20 this time. So if I take away 20, I end up at 162. And then we can count backwards until we get to 155. So we have 161, 160, 159, 158, 157, 156, 155. So I took away 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I took away 7 more. So what I need to do is add up how much I took away, and I took away 127. So that is the difference. It took me 127 to get from 282 to 155. Another thing that is important for students to understand is that you can start with the larger number if it's easier and count up, and you're going to get the same answer every time. So if I have my number line here, I could start at 155, add 100, and get to 255. And then I can say, well, I think I'm going to add 20 more and get to 275. And when I'm at 275, I'm going to count up until I get to 282. 276, 277, 278, 279, 280, 281, 282. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So again, I have 127. Whether I counted back or I counted up, I got the same answer each time. But students, like I said, the most important thing is do not just resort to doing a standard algorithm where you subtract like this and have to borrow and regroup. Otherwise, you're going to teach your child a misconception that is going to affect them understanding and calculating with larger numbers later on. Another great thing to do, and I'm going to refresh the page, is to actually just use base 10 blocks. And you could go right here to this same site, use the base 10 blocks to add and subtract. There's also a lot of other sites such as using interactive hundreds boards. And this one, of course, only goes to 100, but for a child that's trying to understand, like if I have 28, how much more is it going to take to get to 89? So you could see that there's, how many groups of 10 there are in between, and they could count up by ones and tens. And so that is what we want students to be able to do, really understand that the difference between ones and tens. And here I can see from 2 to 8, there'd be 6 groups of 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we have our 6 with some of these added in to make another group of 10. And then we have 1 left over. So it takes 61, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 61 to get to 89. Again, you could use that same thing for subtraction. There's also some great interactive sites like this where you can say, okay, if we have 320, but I need to get to 500, how many more do I need? So you could say, okay, well, let's add 2 more hundreds. And I still, now I'm over, so that wasn't right. So let's take that away. So if I have 320 and I want to get to 500, instead of counting by hundreds, now I need to count by tens. So we could have 10, 20, 30, 40. And you see that students begin to understand how the tens place changes and the hundreds place and the ones place without necessarily following an algorithm of borrowing and subtracting. And I'm going to put in the video or the newsletter as well some common examples of what kids might see or do, like some mistakes that they might make when they go too early into the standard algorithm. The other thing I want everyone to be leery of is using keywords in math. And right here as an example, it says there are 76 tiles per box and I bought 38 boxes. How many tiles do I have all together? When students focus on that one word all together, they're like, oh, I'm supposed to add. But that is not what this is asking them to do. And if this link is also going to be in the newsletter, and if you scroll down, you will see some example videos of students that have followed that rule of just looking for the keyword and doing whatever the keyword has you do, and how that can cause misconceptions later on. So let's head back to the workbook, because after students add and subtract, they're going to get into more problem solving. Now this concept right here is really good. I like to call this a thinking block, and there is a website that has additional problems. If you go right here to thinking blocks, there's add and subtraction, addition and subtraction word problems, and if you click on that, it's going to give you some practice activities. So again, these could take the place of and supplement the worksheet pages, or simply provide that extra practice. Now it gives a problem here at the top, and it says some children went to the karate workshop. There are 30 boys and 12 girls. How many children went to the workshop? Okay, so we don't know how many in all because it says some children went, but we do know there's a certain number of boys and a certain number of girls. And then we can check our answer. And then we're going to start building this. We know that there's 30 boys and 12 girls, and both of those together are going to make the total. So the 30 boys and the 12 girls equals how much in all? And then it says to resize the blocks. Well, I know that 30 is more than 40. And so if it would let us, there we go, we had to click on it like that. So then again, and it does give a calculator, but we want to avoid that. We want kids to really think, okay, if I have 3 groups of 10 and 1 group of 10, that would be 40, plus 2 ones would be 42. So we would type in our answer and type in 42, again, if it would let us. And then you could check your answer, or maybe I need to type it over here. Let's see. Yes, that works. We type it in. So you click and you are done. But again, this is a great way to model exactly what this workbook is trying to show us. So continue to work on problems like that. Do not encourage the standard algorithm. Encourage thinking blocks. Encourage open number lines. Encourage base 10 models so that they will be successful. When they get to 4th grade, they can focus on the standard algorithm. And the rest of the chapter continues to go through problems just like that. And we want kids to check their answers. We want them to make sure they're reasonable. We want kids to understand that there is a relationship between addition and subtraction, that when we subtract, we do add up. So continue to focus on that as a prime component of the lesson. And then the other thing that I want to share with you is the extended problem activity that comes at the end of the chapter. And this is one that you will grade as a learning coach, but it does say to estimate to check. So we do want students to use estimation skills and think about, okay, if I have, it says Liam and his family go to a neighborhood fair every year. This year, the fair committee bought 118 red balloons and 112 blue balloons. They've already blown up a total of 89 balloons on the red and blue balloons. Of the red and blue balloons, Liam says that they still have to blow up 120 more balloons. Estimate to check if Liam's answer is correct. Now, if a child just starts adding and subtracting and doing all these things without drawing models, they're probably going to get themselves in a bit of a trouble. But they really need to think about, okay, if we already have 89 blown up, well, that's not quite this number. They're still a ways away. This number, it says, they say there's 121 more left. And so, is that close enough? Do you think that's going to be the difference? So they can kind of estimate to see, but then they really need to work it out. I would encourage your child to draw models, to use the open number lines and things like that. And then again, they want to explain why Liam's answer is correct. Explain how many more tens or ones may be needed if it isn't correct, and then explain, if it is correct, why. Again, here is another example of reasoning and adding and subtracting. Drawing models is key to being successful in this and really understanding. And then there you go into drawing a bar graph. And here are some of those types of problems, like with the thinking, we have the total and the part. So this is part, whole is one way to think about it. And so students, when they see this, they know that they could add up. They have 127. They could add up to this number, or they could start with the big number, subtract, and end up with the other number. So there's lots of ways to find the part, whole, or the total if you have both parts. And so again, this is one of the most critical parts of the entire unit. So definitely spend time on this lesson with your child so that they will be successful in really understanding what it is about odd and even and addition and subtraction and problem solving. And it's much, much more than just adding and subtracting in rows and columns and borrowing and carrying and regrouping. Third grade really needs to focus on those place value concepts that they learned in second grade. And again, if your child struggles with any of those skills, go back to the second grade skills and review odd and even, review addition and subtraction. Check out the Learnzillion links that are in the newsletter as well that will review some of these skills that were taught in second grade. And then coming up next, we're going to head right into multiplication. And even though there's only 2 units on multiplication, that doesn't mean your child's going to master all the facts within those 2 units, but we are definitely going to start working on them, and we're going to learn strategies, not just use flashcards to memorize. We're going to learn strategies, and we're going to really learn what numbers mean and what it means to multiply. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll talk to you soon.